Welcome to the Investor Empowerment Series radio show, empowering your real estate investing with techniques, opportunities, and information, minus the BS and sales pitches. Now, please welcome the host of the Investor Empowerment Series, Joe Mueller, from the Tough as Nails Investment Syndicate, Joe Mueller.
Hey investors, I wanted to give a quick insider opportunity to the listeners out there who are currently doing deals or just getting started and looking to create more financial efficiencies for their real estate business. Introducing Investors Title Services, a much lower cost option for procuring the necessary title insurance policies for your real estate transactions. Think about how much money you've spent on title insurance in the past on either your current purchases or sales, and think about how much you'd be savings if just a couple $100 per transaction ended up back in your pocket. Well, now you can by optimizing the relationships that other investors have established that you currently need for your business. That's what we do here at Investors Title Services. If you're a fix and flipper, a wholesaler, or a buy and hold landlord, we specifically serve this small niche, offering you the best deal on title policy insurance. Call 847-443-9676 today to learn more about how you can save hundreds of dollars, if not more, on your next title insurance policy.
All right, so this is the Investor Empowerment Series radio show, episode number 79. You probably hear a lot of noise going on around me. We just finished up one of our meetings talking about our off-market cash deal contract that we use on all of our acquisitions for properties that we wholesale, double close, sell to other investors. We had about 30 people in the room here, which is why you hear all this background static, because they're still chatting away, networking here at the office at Tanis Group. I'm putting this thing out live for the benefit of the people that couldn't make it to the meeting and the rest of the podcast world, so they can learn something about how to sit down with a contract and get a deal signed off on at the kitchen table. That said, if you'd like to get a copy of the contract, I'm going to put a link to it in the show notes, actually on the page. So there's going to be a Dropbox link. You can actually download the contract we use and use it for yourself and follow along as you listen to that podcast or our podcast you're going to hear in a minute. It's a little lengthy, but I promise you there's a lot of value there. So episode number 79, the Investor Empowerment Series radio show. Welcome to our meetup and the cash deal contract.
Closing tomorrow. Picked up a new contract today. So, yeah, we got a couple irons in the fire.
Yep. So I'm Joe Mueller. I own Tanis Group. You heard a couple people mention the name if you're new here. So Dan and I partnered up over the last few years, and we decided to join meetups together, and that's how this group comes together every couple weeks. Every 3 weeks now, I think, is the rule. What we're doing. I don't know why, just 3 weeks seems like a nice number. So been investing since 2000, 2001 or so, roughly. I honestly don't know the date. Been flipping and working with Dan. We've been doing wholesale deals for the last couple of years, done quite a few. Have a rental portfolio in Illinois, Milwaukee, and Indianapolis. And, here to help you guys. So if you have questions, concerns, or you need help with something, finding a property, we're also looking to buy. Both Dan and myself are still adding to rentals. So our rental portfolio, anybody who's got anything that comes up on the wholesale side, if we don't want to buy it, we probably know someone that can buy it. So we'll be around afterwards as well to chat if you guys have anything else.
We could potentially partner with you too if you find a nice wholesale kind of deal.
Right.
So that's always an opportunity, particularly for your wholesalers. If you find a place that's got a nice big spread, maybe you want to think about taking it down, and we could potentially partner with you on that and come up with the money to take it down, so that we can list it and sell it for the highest possible profit. Also, at the end of last year, and we'll talk a little bit more about that when we talk about the contract, Joe and I started Investors Title Services because the way it works around here is different than most places in the country. Most places in the country, you're going to buy a house, you and the seller, maybe being handheld by your realtor, go to a title company and they prepare all the docs and you sign everything and away you go. It doesn't work like that around here. So you get a bunch of attorneys involved and that drives up costs. So we've positioned ourselves as the title company that's not only for investors, it's run by investors, so we get it. We know what you're trying to do. We're facilitating the assignment of contracts, double closes. We can do double closes where you won't need transactional funding. So that'll save you 2 points right there, which will increase your profit. And we do title insurance at a discount for investors. So that's really the key. So it's kind of a win-win for everybody.
Right.
Anything to add to that?
A couple people in this room would take advantage of it. I know that. We're about 50% of what regular rate card is what we're seeing. So on average. So we'll save you some cash for sure.
I gotta admit, they saved me a lot of cash. Plus, my situation was kind of weird because I didn't know better. I had the house that I bought, fix and flip. I had it in personal name, so at closing, we did it from my personal name to my LLC, and then sold it from the LLC from there, just so we could show up, where all the money went and stuff. And it went really smooth. I mean, it's great working with these guys. I mean, these guys really do a good job.
Second that.
Yep.
Thank you. Cool.
Awesome.
Let's get started on the contract.
All right, let's talk about contracts.
Everybody have one?
No. Yep.
No? Here's an extra one right here. Everybody should have a 2-page document in front of you that says contract to purchase real estate.
One back.
So I didn't bring it. I considered bringing it, and frankly, I just kind of forgot. But I've got a folder at home that's got cash deal contracts in it, like this. And over time, from working with investors locally, whether they're hawking me deals or sending me opportunities, I've looked over a lot of contracts. They're all a little different. They all have some different wrinkles to them. This one is the one we use. Just made a recent modification, in the last 6 months regarding the title portion, but the fundamentals of the rest of it are all the same. And every time I look at some other contract, it has some interesting aspects. And then Joe and I talk about it, and we always default to, if it's not broke, don't fix it. We've done countless deals. We've never had a deal that was any kind of problem in any way, shape, or form because of the contract we used. So we don't see any reason to change it. And that's some of the beauty of this, is the sheer simplicity of it. So as you know, when you are buying properties on the MLS, you're using that 6.1 contract, which is riddled with tons of language that I get about 4 sentences in, and I can't make up or down sense of it. And so for the sake of buying properties off market, we're typically dealing with people that fall into one of 3 buckets. Either they personally have some financial distress, their property has physical distress, or possibly they're dealing with some circumstantial distress, meaning an inherited property, a probate situation, maybe they're getting divorced. Those are circumstances. So our role in meeting these people is, number 1, to meet them where they are, number 2, to take them from where they are to get them to a better place, and then the magic is finding a way to do that allows them to maintain their dignity through the process. So when it comes to this contract, it's specifically written so a 3rd grader could not only read it, they could tell you what it says. And why that's so important is because it eliminates the need for a seller to say, well, I'd like to take this to my attorney. Because when they say, I want to take this to my attorney, what they're really saying to you non-verbally is, your offer isn't high enough, I don't really want to sign this, and so the excuse that I'm going to use for not doing business right now is I'm going to show this to my attorney. And when you look at this contract, it's almost laughable. You go, well, what is it that you think your attorney's going to find? Like, it doesn't get any simpler than this. So you're not going. So the beauty of it is that we're not requiring sellers to provide a survey. We're, as investors, our value proposition is that we're going to take the house as is, we're going to pay cash, and we're going to, what else are we going to do? Take it as is.
Yeah,
Well,
we're gonna pay closing costs.
Yeah, that's it. And we're going to pay all the closing costs. So, people that, anybody here that's, recently listed a house or sold a house, a traditional method, even when you have the list price, that isn't what it sells for. And then when it sells for, even when you have that number today, and if I looked at it and said, well, that's awesome, you sold it for $185. At closing, how much is your check going to be? And nobody knows. It's the best kept secret. Most people can, kind of back out the realtor commission of 5 or 6%. That's easy. But that whole closing cost thing, it's unknown. It could be this, it might be this. And so our role is to make it as simple as possible. So, when I tell Pat I'm going to give him $82,000 for his house, he's going to get $82,000 for his house. The only thing that's going to come off that is an attorney, if you choose to use one, to prepare some docs for him, and tax prorations, because as you know, in the state of Illinois, taxes are paid a year in arrears. So those are credited at closing. So for your wholesalers in particular, as the buyer, you're going to want to put the name of your company. So for me, it's Riverside Hope LLC and/or signs. Sometimes, and again, does anybody here find themselves in all aspects of life worrying about things that never actually happen? Anybody do that? Thank you. One of the things that people worry about is they go, well, if I put and/or signs, what if they ask me about that? They're not going to ask you about that. And all the time I've been doing this, that maybe came up once, maybe twice. I'd have to really think about it. It doesn't really come up, and so if it comes up, the answer is very simple. I say, listen, I'm just seeing the house for the first time today. I love it. I know I want to be involved in it, and we can agree on a price on it. What I don't know from my standpoint is I have a couple of different, I'm not going to live here. So I'm going to have to make a decision whether I'm going to buy it and do some renovation of some sort and then maybe resell it later. In which case, I'm going to hold it in one LLC that I own. And if I end up deciding, maybe I think I want to hold on to this house for a longer period of time, and maybe I'm going to add it to my rental portfolio, then I have a different LLC that I want to put it in. And because I don't know that today, I'm just leaving it open. But as long as you get $82,000, does it matter to you which LLC it closes in? And the answer is always, hell no. Show me the money, right? So that's number one. 2, you want to make sure you have the right name of who the seller is. You can check the tax records before you go over there. You want to make sure that the person that you're meeting with is actually the person that's qualified to sign, right? So then you're going to put in the address, 123 Main Street, in town of.
You got small for a second there. That's weird. What happened?
Must be a small town.
There you go.
Maybe you want to use that one in Orlando, bro. A bigger pen. Come on, work with me.
Go on. I'll work out the bugs.
All right. So, when I'm with the seller, first of all, I just start filling it out. That's the assumption clause. I'm assuming we're talking about price. I just assume we're going to do this, so I start writing. And if there's going to be a problem, they're going to go, what are you doing? Why are you writing? I go, what? So, if they don't say anything, silence is compliance. It means we're just working our way right through it.
82, Joe.
Oh, we're using 82 as the number? I'm sorry.
We can use any number you want.
Oh, let's do it. Dave says 82. Let's do 82.
I write the deposit's going to be held by Fidelity Title. And the deposit that there's only been one time I've done anything other than write $100 on there. And for some of you that were meeting about a year ago this time, when we put a property on the board, and 2 or 3 other people said, oh yeah, I was at that house. Well, I coughed up $1,500 in cash and gave it to the guy, because that's what it was going to take to get the deal. But any other time, I've never done that. I write $100 on there. Does anybody worry what someone's going to say when you write $100?
Yeah. Aren't they going to question? I don't know. I'm having an impression that they'll question the legitimacy of it.
It's been questioned. Of course it has. So again, when we're dealing in off-market properties, normally these people have a level of motivation. The more motivated they are, and the faster they want the money, they ask no questions. They just want this deal done. Some people, you're right, good catch, Brian, is that sometimes, I don't want to say skeptical is not the right word, but they've bought houses before, and typically when you work with a broker and you're going to buy a house, how much are we going to put down for an earnest check? Typically 1,000, maybe 1,500, right? So again, part of what we have to do here is an education process. One of the things that is a huge benefit to sellers in working with realtors is the hand-holding that goes with it. The realtor walks them through the process and says, here's an attorney that I recommend. Here's a company that does home inspections. You know, they do good work and maybe want to use them. Here's a lender or two I can. So it's all this. When we're there off market, there's no one steering them, so that's our job. So we have to steer them, and we have to explain to them. So I tell them, I say, listen, I go, it's $100 because I buy a lot of houses. I can't have thousands of dollars sitting around in title company escrow accounts. It doesn't make sense from a business standpoint. You can appreciate that, right?
Sure.
And they go, yeah, I guess. And if they seem like they're still a little skeptical / not convinced about that, I say the other thing is, typically if this house is listed, there'd probably be $1,000 in this money. They go, well, yeah. I go, that's because on a traditional sale, as soon as they open escrow, somebody starts spending money. Like the seller is going to need to provide a survey that's going to cost $350 or $400. Well, if the deal falls apart, who's eating the survey? So they got your $1,000. So as they start chewing up expenses, they've got some money there to cover that. Now that's not exactly right necessarily, but it kind of just gives them the point, and they go, here isn't going to be any. You're not providing any survey. Nobody's starting to spend money to do anything, so that's why it's 100. And again, it's never been a showstopper for me. These next 3 things are kind of in there for psychological reasons, because this is what every off-market deal is. You might say, well, why even bother putting them there? Some of what we're trying to convey to people is that this is the agreement that I use, and somehow you're special. So I want to make sure you know that I'm going to pay cash. So this isn't reliant on me getting a mortgage. So I'm going to cross that out. I'm not going to get a $400 or $500 home inspector to spend 5 hours here to find every possible thing wrong, so that I can come back and renegotiate and try to get a lower price later. We're not going to do that. We've already agreed on a price. That is the price. So we're going to cross that out. And then lastly, because we're just doing this kind of in the fashion of people selling a car out of their driveway, you don't have a realtor involved. I don't have a realtor involved. So no one's getting paid a commission or any of that. So we're going to cross that out. So now it looks like we're crossing out all these clauses, and it gives them the feeling that maybe we're doing something a little extra, a little special for them that they might not be doing for other people that they might be buying a property from. Does that make sense?
Yes, but I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Since you're not doing a home inspection, how do you assess the value of the house?
Well, that's all in the process before you even go to get the contract. I mean, you're going to do your homework, you're going to look at comps, you're going to get a general idea of the condition of the property by what they tell you before you even go there. And then when you go there, you're going to look around and you're going to do the best you can to identify problems. Obviously, you're going to bring contractors in later or your buyers in later, and somebody might identify something that you missed. But again, has anybody here ever sold anything that wasn't 100% working perfectly?
Yes.
If somebody asked you, what's the worst thing about this car? And you say, this car runs great. It doesn't, it's got 200,000. This is my wife's car. She's got 200,000 miles on a Toyota. The thing runs like a top. It doesn't leak a drop of oil on the pavement anywhere, but it uses oil. I mean, not to the point where you put your foot on the gas and it blows smoke out the back and it stinks. It just burns a little oil. So about every 1,000 miles, you're gonna have to put a quart in. So if somebody says, well, what's the deal with this car? Because I'm the kind of guy I am, I would of course tell them that up front. Because if not, the engine's gonna blow up in 4,000 miles and then you got a problem. So I would fall to, I'm gonna tell you everything about this car. Here's what I know about it. Here's all its faults. But some people aren't as forthcoming. And people that have problems with their house, they know they got problems with their house.
Yeah,
and some of the value is when you tell them, I'm going to buy it as is. So what I see, and what I don't see, that's part of the reason I have to buy it at this price. Because they got to kind of have the uh-oh factor to a degree covered. And they can appreciate that. Number 4 is a pretty standard thing. You're going to get a marketable title at closing. The closing shall occur on or before. What do you think you might want to write there?
Let me ask you a question about that. If you're doing a cash deal with somebody, to make the deal go through, isn't it better to put as soon as possible, whatever, a really quick date to make them know that you're solid about it? Or
Yes and no.
Okay.
Yes, that would be great, but as soon as possible is like, that's like saying it's a nice day. In Chicago, this time of year, today was a nice day. To the people that live in LA, this wasn't such a nice day. Their nice day is a little better than this in the end of February. So it's all relative. So when you say as soon as possible, well, that's vague. So you got to really kind of tie it down a little tighter than that. So normally people put a date.
Okay. Well, typically, since it's off market, like me, I would put on there 10 days after acceptance, doing a cash deal. So 10 days after acceptance of the contract. But this being an off-market deal, I mean, this is new to me.
Right. So that would be fair, except we're not selling cars out of a driveway where you pull out a fistful of hundreds and I sign a title and away you go. The limiting factor on these deals on how fast people can close is attorneys and title companies. That's the limiting factor. And I'd rather under-promise and over-deliver than the other way around. So if you tell them, oh, I close in 4 days, yeah, technically that's true. You got the money, they got the house, but there's some other things that have to line up with schedules, with the title company. It's the end of the month. Like, sometimes things don't go perfect. So you could do that, certainly, but then you might have to go back and get an extension. If you're working with us, we can probably find a way to get it done in 10 days, of course. This is also a lot for the wholesalers or the aspiring wholesalers in this room, because they're not going to close in 10 days because they need time to find their cash buyer. They need to market it. They need to, and again, let's be clear, when we're wholesaling, we are not selling properties. We don't own properties. If you're not a broker, and I'm not a broker, I'm not selling properties. What I am selling is my contract. I have a contract on a property that I'm willing to sell to you for a price. So you can take over my position in that contract. So I always preface it by, I always write on there 30 business days from acceptance. That's a little psychological hack, because do you know what 30 business days really is? 45 days. But it sounds better when you say 30. Kind of like when you buy things that are $1.99. We all know it's $2, but somehow $1.99 sounds better, doesn't it? So I always, and again, I tell them, if we can get it done sooner, you're ready any day, right, Brian? Yeah,
Yes.
I'm ready yesterday. Terrific. You're ready, and I'm excited about the opportunity. So we're gonna try to get this done as soon as possible. But I'd rather put a time frame on that allows time for dumb stuff that can happen, so we're not amending contracts and changing later. Is that okay? What do you think they said? Okay. So that's why we put 30 days to acceptance there.
Dan, I have a quick question for you on this. Are you supposed to put like a 3-day attorney review or anything on
Well,
these
that's
things?
on page 2.
Oh,
So all business transactions have a 3-day incubation period. So any dumb decision you make in 3 days, you can reverse it. Okay. Even though we all know that's true, I write on here that we agree this is a legally binding agreement when we sign it. Nobody's ever even blinked. No one's ever asked me a question about it. What does that mean? It just that never comes up. So that's one of those things that maybe they know that, maybe they don't, but after the fact, I hope they do read it, because it just solidifies that we're not just we're not just agreeing to things we don't really mean. This is, we're really doing this, and by signing this, we're doing this. We're in, right? You're selling, I'm buying, we have a deal. Number 6. This is the key clause right here that's going to allow you to control the deal. Particularly if you're wholesaling, it's critical that you control the deal. Because if it gets out of your hands, then you lose control, and then bad things can happen. And how do you lose control? Is because when your seller brings this contract to their attorney instinctively wants to order titles and control the closing, because that's what's traditionally done in this market. So if you can imagine attorneys having a quote gentleman's agreement between each other, the way it works is the attorney that represents the seller is the one that normally handles all the title work. And handling title work means ordering title. And they want to do that because that's a profit center for them. Okay? So by putting this in there, first of all, it's backed by Fidelity National Title, so this isn't some little 2-horse title company nobody's ever heard of. And if anybody doesn't know, Fidelity actually owns Chicago Title. And most everyone's heard of Chicago Title, and they think they're the big boy. Yeah, well, Fidelity owns them. Okay, so that's a legitimate deal. Investors Title Service is going to act as the sole exam review agent, and the key words, and shall place the title order with Fidelity on behalf of the buyer. Now, the reason I tell these people that I need to control this closing is because I'm paying for it. If I'm going to pay for all the closing costs, do you care where we close? As long as you get your 82,000, right? And because I like to give a lot of analogies because I think people can relate to them better, I go, it's the same way if you have a friend that gives you a call that's in from out of town and says, hey, I know you're busy. I'd love to, while I'm in town, I'd love to get together. Let's meet for dinner. I'm buying. At the point your friend says, I'm buying, anybody really care where we're going for dinner? I don't. They're buying. Take me anywhere you want to go, right? So that's kind of the same spirit here. So, if I have to go so far, is to remind me, go, look, I run the second business, and I'm sure you can appreciate, like any other business, when you're a regular customer and you have relationships, you get better pricing. And because I do a lot of business, and I drive all my business through the same title company, I get discounts. And because of those discounts is what allows me to offer you as much as I possibly can for your property, because there's only so much money here. To have this make sense? And I want you to get as much of it as possible. You'd like to get as much money as possible, wouldn't you? Of course they do. So that's how we cover that. You know, in the event that I bail out on this thing, you know, you can take your $100 and go to Applebee's, have a good time. And then for the wholesalers, this is the critical piece right here, because we need to, so what this really says is it's subject to the buyer's inspection. Now that's not the same kind of inspection that we crossed out. This is just saying that the buyer's going to inspect it and approve the property prior to the transfer of title. So on a typical 6.1 kind of contract, we have a 5-day attorney review, we have a 10-day inspection period, and after that contract goes hard, right? What this says is I can cancel this all the way up to day number 29 of the 30 business days. Now you would never want to do that, but you could. The whole idea, particularly for you aspiring wholesalers, is if you have a deal, do you know how you know it's not a deal? When 2 weeks later you don't have it sold. If you don't have it sold, that's only because it's not a deal. Particularly in this market where there's a thirst for investment grade properties. If you have a deal, you know, we've had several times, we've had deals gone in 24 hours.
Yep.
Yes?
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Multiple times.
Multiple times.
Like a phone call.
Right. So again, we're there to facilitate. These sellers are counting on you. You've went there, you've made them an offer, and they're counting on you to get this deal done for them. And if it doesn't look like you can, don't drag this thing on a month and a half and then bail on them, because it gives a bad name to everybody involved. I did a deal some years ago at a house in Mundelein. Found this thing on Craigslist. The guy was from out of town. Ironically, he was coming to town the next day, literally, for a wedding. I met him over at the Marriott Courtyard by the Marriott Lincolnshire on Milwaukee Avenue, and I sat with him and we talked, and he was hesitating to do business with me, which why would anybody hesitate to do business with me? And I go, it seems like you're a little uncertain about something. What is it? He goes, I'm just a little gun shy because I thought I had this house sold once before, and the guy that had it under contract with me, he kept dragging it out and extending it. This thing went on for about 3 months, and then finally he tells me that he can't get the financing to buy the house. And so that bad taste in his mouth, I had to overcome, which I did, and he signed. We got the deal done. But the point is, this is the stuff that gives, again, the consumer public doesn't really know what wholesaling is. That's an insider term. The truth is, in order to truly wholesale, you actually have to close. That's what wholesale companies do. They buy large quantities of items, they put them in their store, and then they sell them at a wholesale price, some of them, and some are boutiques where they sell it at inflated prices. So you can't really wholesale anything you don't own. So the reality is, we assign contracts. When you're wholesaling, among investors, we call it wholesaling, but just so it's clear what we're really doing, it's assignment of contract. And what we call wholetailing, which is buy a house, close on it, and then put it back on the market, that's truly wholesaling. Okay? Also, yes?
Oh, sorry. Doesn't number 8 counteract number 2, because you just waived your right for the inspection review that you crossed out? Now you're in this paragraph here, you're saying that you're entitled to it again?
Well, here it says that it's an inspection and approval of the property. The other one didn't say anything about approving the property. It just said that we're not going to do an inspection, looking for a home inspection. So,
and I think really the intent of this, so we don't get confused on it, is you're going to need access to the property. So this helps open the door to have those conversations like, yeah, I want to get my painter Dave over here this weekend. Whether you really is going to paint it or it's your potential contract buyer, right? So it starts that conversation if they even do ask, and this is what I've been with when we've done stuff together. Of can I borrow the key on Saturday? Or sometimes they even hand over the key, just because we say things like, yeah, I'm gonna have a bunch of contractors run through here in the next 2 weeks. We don't want to bother you since you live an hour away. And that provides that opportunity to get into the property, and whether you're marketing it or truly going to fix and flip or whatever your goal is. And to answer your question, Adam, I think, it says home inspection on the other page. So that's the true, I'm bringing in a home inspector who's going to poke and prod at it for 2 hours.
It's just your way to open the door to get in there.
This is merely, by inspection he means access.
I got you.
I guess is a better way to put it.
Yeah, I think that's the right word. And then, of course, subject to financial partners' approval. Wait, you're not buying the house? No, of course I'm not. But I don't have unlimited resources, so I have financial partners to come alongside me on these deals, and that's why they work with me, because they know my numbers and I know a good opportunity. So they just want to kind of review it and give their blessing to it. But the likelihood of any of my financial partners not coming alongside me is frankly pretty slim. But of course it's possible, so you want to leave yourself an out. This is the key one. Seller to provide buyer's representatives with access for inspection, repair estimates, and to market the property upon acceptance. That's a pretty scary thing to write on there, isn't it? Because it could raise questions. What do you mean market the property? That's the fear, right? What if somebody asks you about that? First of all, let's go back to what I said right at the beginning. They don't. Nobody asks me anything about this stuff. But you have to be prepared in case they do. So the answer here is, listen, I need, my representatives are, as Joe mentioned, I have different contractors, and contractors they run in goofy schedules, and they're going from this job to that job, and they call me and they go, hey, I'm leaving Monday night early, any chance I can go look at that house on my way over to here? And so the whole idea is, because we're kind of running a business here, back to the analogies, this is kind of like the on-ramp of the freeway. You don't get all the way down to the bottom and come to a complete stop, and everybody's wailing by you at 90 miles an hour, and then do a neutral drop and hope you can get up to speed in 50 yards. We come down the ramp and gain speed so that we merge, right? Because that's what we're looking to do here. So the idea is that we're not looking to do absolutely nothing between now and closing day, and then on closing day, then we come over and start scratching our head going, well, what do you think we should do with the place? We like to start that process now. We like to get our plans in place. We like to get some materials ordered. We like to have our contractors all lined up. So when closing day comes, we close on Tuesday, and Wednesday we got guys doing work. We're ready to go. That's the merging process that I described. So that's why we need access to inspect what we're going to repair and what it's going to cost. And then lastly, again, this is, I read Facebook forums every now and then, and I hear people going in circles about this, and I just shake my head, because most people don't want to talk about the fact that they might quote wholesale. Big mistake. Disclose, and disclose, because that's first of all, that's the honorable thing to do. We're not running a scheme. We're not trying to sucker people. We're not trying to exploit and take advantage of people. But we are in business, and it's our goal to make a profit, and that's the American way. So I merely say to them, listen, I looked at a lot of properties, and it's possible that I find another property that maybe I like a little better than this one. I know you're counting on me to get this deal done for you. I happen to be a part of real estate networking groups. I know a lot of other people that are looking for these kind of opportunities. So back to the and/or signs, it's the same conversation, Stan. As long as it gets you 82,000, do you really care who's 82,000, or you just want to make sure you get 82,000 in 30 business days?
Bring it.
Do you think anybody's ever had a problem? Oh no, Dan, it's got to be your money. I'm expecting you at closing. I want to see you there. No. Believe me, after you spend some time with me, and some of you people probably feel this way right now, you don't really want to see me anymore. You're done with me. You know, they can't wait to get me out the door, and they hope they don't see me ever again. So that's why, you know, I tell them, look, my goal, I'm not going to live here, so I'm not getting all emotional about the cherry tree in the backyard, because my grandma had a cherry tree in the backyard. For me, this is merely a business proposition. My interest in being in this property is to somehow, God willing, make a profit. Sometimes that doesn't happen, but we're hoping it does.
A quick question, Dan. Have you run into individuals, the homeowners, that think that if you're going to wholesale it, they realize that you are going to sell it for more money, and then they hold out to try to get more than the $82,000?
No, because we don't really position it quite like that. So I don't tell them I'm going to sell it to somebody to make a profit. I don't beat them over the head with it. I say sometimes, you know, I tell them my goal is to make a little profit, and you know, as long as they dish it off to somebody else, and as long as you get your 82, are we good? I've already said to them, my goal is to make a profit. So whether that be,
Plus, they're typically in a situation where they really can't question too many things at the time, correct?
right, the more resistance people give you on things that don't matter, that's really a sign that A, they're not that motivated, B, they're going to be a problem all the way through, and it's warming up, so this isn't the best example today, but if you're driving 62 between Route 25 and Route 59, there's a pretty long stretch there of 2-lane country road, everybody knows about it. When it's 3 degrees out with wind chill of 22 below, and your car has a situation that causes it to die, like the electrical goes out of it, something weird, and you're lucky enough to get it to the shoulder, which now is in the ditch because it's over there, and it's freezing cold, and you can't keep the engine running, so at least stay warm while you're waiting for help. If there's a car coming that looks like they might slow down and stop and offer help, or let you use their cell phone because yours is dead, or any kind of aid, does anybody care what color car it is? Of course not. So these people have a situation. We're the ones coming alongside them because we can help them, and we're in a position to get them the money they need to get it to them as quick as possible so they can get out of the situation they're in and move on with their life. And that's, I mean, frankly, if Joe hasn't watched this with his own eyes, he probably wouldn't believe it. When I sit with these people, I start filling out that contract. Boom, boom, boom. Here's what I do. Here, take one. Rip your staple. Can I rip your staple? I start filling it out. There you go. The first little checkpoint to make sure that they're tracking with me, even when I know, they go, what's the zip code here again? If they tell me the zip code, we have a deal. If they don't tell me the zip code, there's something standing in the way. So we find that out right up here. What's the zip code here again? Oh, 60110? Yeah, that's what I thought. Write it down, and then we just keep writing. So 82, we talked about 82,000, right, Stan? Okay, 82,000. I write the 100. Boom, boom, boom. I just write. We're talking. I go, yeah, some of this stuff we're going to cross out because, you know, I'm not getting a mortgage. I'm not getting no commissions. We're going to cross that out initial. And then I go, you know, I'm going to write down here 30 business days. We're going to try to get it done as quick as we can because we want the house, you want the money, but the limiting factor is these damn attorneys and title companies and their schedules, and can we reschedule? And, you know, I go, if you had a car title and I had money, we'd be done today, but houses are a little, they go, yeah, okay, good. Then I take it over and go to the next page, and I put the date, and I sign it, and I hand it to them, or I put it with them if I'm sitting next to them, and I don't hand it to them like this. I hand it to them like this. So you have page 1 and page 2. And I put it down and I go, I've already said, I go, so Stan, you're going to want to sign it right here as the seller. And I hand them the pen. That's it. And you know what they don't do? Almost never does anybody go back to page 1 and go, let me read through this, I want to make sure. Have you seen people just take this contract and sign it?
Normally they're just gabbing away like Charlie Brown's teacher to you, and you're just nodding your head, not paying attention to them. And you're filling it out, and then you hand it over, and they just sign it. Yeah, that's typically what happens. Yeah.
That's typically what happens.
Wow.
You've talked about the price. You've kind of explained the terms of the contract at that point. They're comfortable with you as the buyer, and that's the key to using this. Building that relationship with the seller. That's the key to the whole thing about utilizing a contract like this. If it was the 12-page or whatever it is, 13-page, 6.1 broker contract that we see here, that's got a lot of legalese in it. There's a lot of shit in that contract. So that's going to immediately scare them off. The simplicity of this, they know they're watching you fill it out, and they could even read quickly along as you're doing it. That actually makes them more comfortable. So it goes quick. They don't question it.
The goal is to get contracts signed. Going to look at housing, we had a really good meeting. To me, good meetings end with a signature. That's what makes it a good meeting. And there's a whole science of what we say and what we do, and how we say and what we do when to get them to that point. So that's why this is kind of like, this is like the credits at the end of the movie without telling you what the movie is in the middle. But this is the end result, is this contract, and we've done all the other steps right. This becomes not a problem. This is just a piece of paper that facilitates the deal. But it's important that we talk about how to fill it out, what things are in there, in case you do get questions, and you might, that you always want to have intelligent answers for why things are the way they are. And then it's just it just depends how hardball you want to be. Sometimes I have people say, well, I really want my attorney to look at this. I go, that's fine. I go, but you need to understand that attorneys don't make money by looking at agreements and go, yeah, this looks good. That's not how they make money. They pull out their red pen like your teacher in grade school, and they start marking it up. Yeah, I'm not comfortable with this. I like to add some language about this. And I go, that's a problem. Because then when I get that back, then guess what I have to do? No, I have to send that to my attorney, because now some lawyers marked it up, and now in order to protect my interest, I got to send it to my attorney, and that costs me money. So the more I start spending money on stupid things, now it's not $82,000 anymore. Now I'm down to 81. And I pull out some other deals I've done. I go, you can see this is the same contract on this deal, and on this deal, and on this deal, and here's the contract, and here's the HUD. Here's the contract, here's the HUD. Here's the contract, here's the HUD. Right? So what I'm showing you is that there isn't any reason this deal won't get done, and there isn't any reason you're not getting your $82,000, because this is some invalid BS kind of contract. Basically, you want to sell, I want to buy, and this is just a couple of sentences to facilitate that without 13 pages of jargon that's mostly for attorneys anyways. So, and then sometimes they have to go a little further, and I say, listen, I go, your attorney is here to look out for your best interests. I realize that, and I respect that. At the same time, your attorney doesn't really happen to know, or you probably haven't shared with them the depths of the conversation we've had today on what's going on in your life and why it is that it's important for you to get this house sold and get the money for it as quick as possible, because you have other circumstances that maybe your attorney doesn't know about. So just realize there's people every day that go to the doctor, and the doctor who also has your best interest at heart and wants the best for you for kind of the same but different reasons. And people every day get told, you really need to think about losing 20 pounds, and every time you come here, I tell you got to quit smoking. And that's the advice of the doctor. And they pull out of the doctor's parking lot, they light up a cigarette, and they hit the Wendy's drive-thru. Because at the end of the day, this is your life, and you're going to do with it what you want. People can tell you what they recommend. At the end of the day, this is your house. It's your decision. And if you want $82,000 and you want it in the next 3 weeks, this is the process. But again, it rarely comes to that.
Sorry, a couple questions. Do you need to get this notarized and this will stand up in court? And how quickly do you get them to move out after the deal is done?
I'm not sure I exactly understand the question.
They don't need to be notarized.
Doesn't need to be notarized.
All right, and so the owner of the property after the 82,000 is given, do they have a time frame to exit the property? Like 2 weeks or something?
Oh, no. They have to be gone at closing.
Okay.
Right. But again, the value proposition is when you list the house to the realtor, and in the contract it says that property has to be broom swept, right? You gotta do a bunch of work. Again, the value proposition that we offer is that walk around the house, take anything out of here that you want that has any value, sentimental or monetary, and all the rest of the stuff you really don't know what to do with, just leave it here. We're going to take care of all this for you. We're providing, to some degree here, we're providing a service, and as we know, anybody that does service for you costs money. We all know if you stop at AutoZone, it doesn't cost $50 for 5 quarts of oil. But somehow when I take my car to the place, I walk out of there $50 light. Because I'm paying for a convenience and I'm paying for a service. And we're providing a service. We're going to buy this property as is, and you can leave all your junk in it, food in the refrigerator. I mean, it's nauseating some of the stuff that we buy. But that's, if you weren't going to buy it like that, we wouldn't be buying it at the prices that we need to buy it for. It would be a retail sale at the highest possible price on the market for as many days as it takes to get that. So again, when we're looking at these properties, we're dealing in a less than 5% of all sales. That's a little niche that we're in. So that's why I don't get so discouraged when it's hard to find deals, because that's not the general market. The general market is nice, pretty houses that are for retail, that have been all cleaned up and closets emptied and freshly painted in some areas to make it show as good as possible.
And I think the other side to answer your question is if there's a situation where a seller does need like a holdover into that property for whatever the reason is, they need a place to go or they're moving in with their parents, whatever it is, and they need another month, they're going to identify that right on the spot because that's their concern. That's one of their motivations in the back of their head is like, well, I can't move until, June 1st, even though we're closing on this in March. So they're going to identify that up front because they don't want to be on the other side of that because no one's thinking in the back of their head like, I'm just going to sell it to them and stay inside this house. Because the back end is, right, I'm going to get kicked out. Right? So if that comes up, which we've dealt with that before, we've made agreements handwritten onto the contract of, seller has 30 days to vacate after closing. And, we've been successful with that. And that's with any real estate contract.
Mm-hmm. And if not, then you call Ben.
Yeah. All around ass kicker.
Right. But again, sometimes if people say, well, I can't be out here until June 1st, they go, then why don't we plan on closing on June 1st? Because if you say that, they might decide they can, wait a minute, I don't get the 82,000 until June 1st. I want the money sooner than that. And the only way I get the money is I got to get out of here sooner, and they find a way to get out of there sooner.
Dan?
Yes.
Have you had anybody ask you for proof of funds?
That's a great question.
Great question.
Great question.
Pull it out of your pocket.
That's sarcastic.
I'm not. I have to think long and hard if anybody's asked for it. I've offered it on an occasion or two. So I have a screenshot of my Chase account on a day where it just happened to be stuffed to the gills with money. And I go, here, let me pull up. Here's my Chase app. Like you can see right there, there's a checking account, there's the balance. And they go, okay. But again, it usually doesn't come to that because when I say I'm not sure, I'm trying to remember who or where. I have been asked. I was just trying to put a particular story to it, but I go, oh yeah, I remember. I can't on the spot think of that, but what I can tell you is that I have been asked that, and I kind of laugh. They go, really? They go, let me ask you a question. Do you think if I didn't have the money to buy your house, I would have drove over here, spent 2 hours with you, and gone through all this? If I didn't have the money to buy it, I'd probably be home watching TV. And they go, oh yeah, that makes sense.
Well, I had the lady who emailed me. That was one of the things that she wanted. She sounded like she was a realtor because she sent me the 6.2 and approved funds.
That's
and
possible.
If I wanted to make an offer.
That's possible. And again, I don't have the percentages in front of me. I just was listening to something the other day where they threw them out again. Communication is broken into 3 pieces. It's the words you say, and it's the body language that you give with it, and I forgot the third thing now, but the point is, that's why being in front of people is always best whenever possible, because it breaks down that barrier, allows them to put a face to a name, and now you become a person. And when you're dealing with somebody on the phone, and you're texting and emailing contracts back and forth, they don't know you, they don't trust you, all they hear about is scams on the internet and people getting, ripped off. And I mean, to that point, got a phone call from a desk sergeant in, what town was it? Winthrop Harbor. And he had gotten one of our direct mail pieces, and he had a concerned resident call and say, hey, I got this solicitation, and he was just calling to check it out and see if it was legit. I've had those calls twice, since like 2013. I always thank him for calling. I go, I can appreciate why somebody might have that concern. I tell him, this is what I do, this is what I think. And he goes, okay, yeah, that all sounds right. He goes, just do a little follow-up. I go, that's excellent. So, yeah, so when you're dealing with somebody long distance, you haven't really bonded with them in quite the same way that you would if you were with them, and so they just want to know you are who you say you are. That only makes sense. Any other questions?
What about married couples? What if they're not together at the same time?
So one of the things that is a qualifying question, hey, so I'm going to come over tomorrow at 3. Is everybody that's on the deed that would need to be in alignment and agree to this going to be there so we can all meet together? Because, how do you think I know that? There's always the out-of-town brother. There's always the somebody that's going to choke up, cause a problem, right? And the reason why it's our goal to get these things signed when we're there. Has anybody bought kind of a big ticket item ever, and right ahead of the purchase you have a little anxiety and your heart's racing a little bit and you're going, should I really be doing this? Me too. And that's where the sellers got. And this is the art of blowing up a balloon, and it's really taut, and as soon as you let go of it, all the air blows out. And then, in order to get them to this point again, we got to start at the beginning, and we got to fill that balloon with air all over again. So, we're all the way there, they're this close, we just got to push them across the goal line while we're there, if possible. And if you've done your job from the time you said hello to them the first time, and you handled yourself in the right way, said the right things, with the right sincerity when you're with them in person, getting the signatures isn't really the problem.
You normally fill out one copy of their contract and take it with you?
That's a good point. I usually have the only copy of the contract, and I tell them I'll email you a copy or, get it to them that way. So, that actually can buy you some time, I guess, but every now and then I make double copies, but we had a situation once where there was 2 copies, and one of them, the buyer and seller were inverted by accident, and when you have 2 copies of anything, just make sure that everything's the same, because in the heat of the moment, sometimes mistakes happen. So this is my experience with Joe, and this is the contract we use. But this is a forum where we're all here to learn from each other, and frankly, I don't have all the answers. So if anybody has any experience with contracts, experience with sellers, experience with clauses that would be beneficial to everybody in the room, I for one would like to hear it, and I'm sure everybody else would too.
Joe, with you being a licensed broker, do you have to disclose that you're an agent when you're using this, or how does that work?
Yeah, if I was the one dealing with the seller, yeah. He's always the buyer in our situations, so he's not licensed. I'm the guy behind the curtain. Face for radio. What?
Can you explain that taxes to be prorated at 105? Like, because I've seen it at 100, I've seen it at 105. What is that?
That's a good question.
That's a great.
Wow.
You know, if I didn't know better, I think this is that CNN thing where someone's giving you the questions. No, this is excellent. That's a great question. So typically, taxes are prorated at 100%. Well, this says 105, but I know standard MLS deal. What is it? 105? It is 105.
Yeah.
See, I don't do MLS deals, so how would I know? Okay, well then that's standard.
It can be 100. It can be 105. Just bear in mind if you're going to buy a property or you're going to wholesale a property, that typically that tax bill raises upon a new transaction. So in customary real estate deals, they don't give you the 100%. They give you a little bit more to cover that raise in taxes when the new tax bill comes. So that's why that number is at 105. Sometimes it's as high as 110 or 115.
Okay.
Typically, in a retail transaction, you'll negotiate it to 105. We've done it 100. Sometimes the seller's pretty savvy about it, and they say, no, I don't want to. I'm paying you 100% of whatever my tax bill is. I'm not giving you any extra. And depending on the deal, if we want the deal and it makes the numbers make sense, yeah, we don't care. Sure, 100%. So cross that off and write 100 then, and initial it with the seller.
And again, the
So that's customary in a transaction.
Okay.
In Illinois.
And, you were saying that the seller is the one who pays that, because if you're
Right.
offering for 82,
Right.
they have to pay. We have to let them know that it might be less.
We get it as a credit as the buyer at closing. So sometimes that's why when you buy a place for 82, and then you've got all the closing costs, but then that's offset by the tax prorations, which gets you a little above or a little below that price you agreed on.
So it's not. So that most likely they won't get 82.
Right.
Right.
They're getting 82 less their current tax bill essentially.
And like I was talking to you earlier, I've got this guy that owes 70.
Right.
I want to make sure he understands that this is 100%.
So if you want
5% proration, we need to cover that, not.
Yes. So if you have a situation where somebody has a mortgage balance of $100,000, like he's kind of bringing up, and they need to pay off that mortgage, and they don't care if they get a single dollar from the transaction, but you need to make sure the mortgage is paid off, then you in theory would pay $100,000 plus a tax bill on top of it. And what we do is we call that we'll buy on a net price, and we'll actually cross off that number 9. So instead of it saying we're going to cross off number 9 at that top section right there. I'm sorry, that bottom section. So there's no more tax proration paid at closing. And right here where it says 82, we're going to write 82 net.
I've done that a couple times. I don't like it. It confuses me.
All it means is the seller is going to end up with $82,000. That's what their check is going to say, unless they add on additional costs on their own behalf. So if they hire an attorney or they go through extra processing on their side and they're getting charged fees for something that isn't privy to us particularly as buyers, then maybe they'll only get $81,500. But that's their choice at that point. We're paying them 82 net, if that makes sense.
So before I forget, but I'm sorry.
I said it was a little confusing, but yeah.
We talked about one of the primary roles that's important to sellers that realtors provide, and that's the hand-holding. Well, because we're not realtors and we're just there to buy, someone's got to do some hand-holding with these people. That's our job. So one of the ways that we try to keep these transactions and have them run as smoothly as possible is by maintaining the control of it, and where things run the risk of going the wrong direction is when Brian and I have a deal, and even though it's this simple contract, and he takes it to his attorney, and his attorney starts trying to say, well, it's really important that I handle all this for you because I want to make sure you're protected, and all these scary words, and then that puts doubt in the seller's mind. The way we alleviate that is we say, in order to facilitate the closing, you're probably going to need an attorney that needs to draft up, you know, the documents and the deed and the master state. They got to figure out the numbers. So typically, the attorney does that. Here's an attorney that we work with that I can recommend that takes care of this for people for me that are typically selling me their houses. And this is an insider to what we're doing. So Ashley Wilson is an attorney. She handles things on behalf of ITS, but she can facilitate the paperwork for your sellers. So if Ashley's going to handle things, there isn't anybody trying to booger up your deal. And if you're going to get in the middle where it's going to be the seller is going to have their own attorney, and the buyer's going to have an attorney, and you're in the middle of a wholesale deal, Ashley, for a fee, can make sure to stay in the middle of that and make sure that your interests are represented. I forgot, again, some of you are going to be my age, you're going to forget stuff. Someone just told me recently about some wholesale deal they had, and between the attorneys at the closing, they essentially cut the wholesaler out of the deal. And the wholesaler didn't make any money. Because the attorney go, well, this is simple. And, you know, because if you're signing a contract, if I buy Eric's house, I'm going to sell it to Stan, they're together, I get out of the way at that point, you know, and if I show up to closing, then it's, well, you know, it might get complicated. So you don't want to be there, you just want to let it happen. This way, there'll be somebody that has your back through the process to make sure you get paid. Because anybody that's worked long and hard to find an off-market deal knows it's not a layup. And when you find one, you want to make sure to get paid.
You know how much her fee is?
What's that?
You know how much her fee is?
I don't. You'd have to contact her, but she's fair, she's reasonable. And the nice thing is, I mean, I don't know about y'all, I don't know the last time I went to a closing. Because if I want some cookies, 7-Eleven's got them right next door, and I don't have to drive all the way to a title company to get them. So the point is, we live it, you know, this is 2018. Ashley sends me a file, it has all the docs, I print them, I sign them, she has power of attorney for me, I send them back, I'm done. And if I'm selling a place, then I make sure she has my routing number and account number, and then I wait for the wire. That's it. So no reason to be there. And frankly, for your sellers, they don't need to be there either. So Ashley's in Richmond. If you think this is out in the middle of nowhere, take a ride to Richmond. Okay? But the point is, it doesn't matter because they're not going to have to drive to Richmond to sit with Ashley. All they need, Ashley just needs the particulars. She'll handle all the stuff. She can send it, you know, FedEx. They can sign it and send it back. There's plenty of time. So the sellers really don't even have to go to closing if they don't want to. Does anybody want a card of Ashley's?
So Ashley is our attorney for the title company, so she works alongside us when we're helping investors through their transactions. To answer your question, Brian, a little bit better is we don't know the exact fees because it kind of depends on the situation. If you're doing a retail, if you're doing the backside of a retail fix and flip that you fixed up and you're going to sell it, the fees, and you're working through our title company, you're getting a reduced fee based on that relationship. If you were to just call her out of the yellow pages randomly, it's going to be different. So what we've created is by building relationships with other investors and working with her, obviously she's working on volume now. So she's getting a lot more business than she did this last year. For sure. So the fees are reduced compared to what you pay a customary attorney, but if it's a wholesale deal, it's an assignment, it's a double closing, if it's a retail sale because you just fixed and flipped something, that number changes. We've done, her pricing's been as low as $250. We've seen it as high as $500. It depends on the transaction.
Okay.
But very reasonable nonetheless.
She's really personable too. That's who I just used on my deal. I mean, she was in California, and I thought she wasn't going to get in when we closed on the 13th. And she's like, yeah, I'll be there, don't worry about it. She was on vacation. She still talked to me about things. I mean, I would text her and stuff. She gave me her personal number. She's a really personable person. She's got all the answers for everything. She was very good.
Question?
What off-market properties have you had the most success with, would you say?
What do you mean?
Have you gotten the most deals from? Like pre-foreclosures or?
Oh, the lists? Like the source of the motivation, you mean? I don't know. We'd have to look at that for specifics, but we're hitting 6 or 7 different, high equity, age-based, probate, pre-foreclosure.
We're running the table.
Yeah, I mean, there's all of them. I mean, honestly, I don't know if there's a specific one that's been particularly the best profit per deal.
Or most of your deals, have they come from like pre-foreclosures or you don't?
They're all kind of different. I mean,
It's
a variety.
It's not any one thing. It's just, where's the right place to go fishing in the lake? Get a pole and just get to the lake is half the battle for people.
Yeah.
Right? So
Well, a different way of saying it is they all work.
They all work.
yeah, that's true.
Anybody that has any kind of level of motivation, and there's so many different types, the lists and the different types are endless. I mean, they just are. You see an estate or a garage sale, make a phone call. Hey, is the house for sale? Again, 990 times the answer is we know. It only takes one,
And I think
and you're in.
part of that as well as the marketing that you're presenting. So we could hit somebody. I think Catherine said probates, right? We could hit probates every, a list of 5,000 probates a month. But if we have poor language in our marketing piece, it's not going to matter. So we're constantly, there's evolution to everything. Every month something changes, whether it be a color or a style of handwriting or whatever it is. It's all across the board. And we do that for that reason, because it's you never know what's going to hit based on what somebody sees or the color of an envelope or whatever.
So I'm just going to throw out there, in January, Joe and I held a 2-day intensive on wholesaling. We had a great response in terms of turnout, and we were even more impressed with the reviews and the evaluations
Feedback.
and the video testimonials people were willing to make. I mean, it was a 2-day thing. We said we were going to be here till, 5 o'clock, and we were here till what time? 5:30 or 6 on a Sunday. I mean, and nobody was running out of the room. And, for your aspiring wholesalers, there's really only 5 things that has to be done. It's not rocket science. That doesn't mean it's easy, but the system is simple. Number 1, you need to do some marketing. Number 2, when the phone rings, you have to answer to call them back. Based on that conversation, you have to do a property evaluation to find out if it's worth getting off the couch. You have to go and meet with them and get a contract signed, and then you have to get it closed. Those are really the steps. And there's 3 things you have to be good at. You have to be good at knowing your ARVs. You have to be good at knowing your repairs. And you have to be good when you're with people. Because at the end of the day, this is a sales job. And for you realtors, this is like going on a listing appointment. You can go there and make nice and give them all the comps. And if they don't list with you, that wasn't a good meeting. Because they listed with somebody else. So it's the same way here. So we go in as buyers, but we're really salespeople. We're going in there to help them identify that I'm your best solution. And I'm the person that can get this done, and I'm the person with the experience and with the rapport, and you can trust me. And here's some deals I've done before, so you know that I didn't just get out of some 3-day boot camp. This is the real deal. And when you put all those things together, you get deals. If all the planets get in the right line. Yes, Joe.
Yeah, Dan, have you ever had a transaction where the seller signed the contract, said, I'm willing to go ahead, but I don't have money for a lawyer. Just have the title company make out the deed for me to sign and the closing statement?
No. But what I did do one time is I said, let's do this. I'm going to increase the price that I'm going to pay you for the house by $500. And although I'm not going to pay the attorney, I can't. But with the extra proceeds you're going to get from the house, you'll have the extra $500 to pay the attorney. So you'll end up with the same, but I'll pay $500 more for the house. I have done that once. All right, any other last questions?
I was wondering if we should tie page 1 and 2 together better, because I don't want any confusion. We're like, wait, I signed up for a price that was less than that or more than that. If we should have like initial at the bottom of the first page to prove that those two pages were together at one point, maybe put a footer on there saying this is page 1 of 2 and this is page 2 of 2 with a spot to initial on the bottom there.
That's a great idea. There isn't any reason not to do that.
Okay.
And Joe and I will talk about that later. And I got lunch money that says we'll look at each other and go, it's not broke, don't fix it. But that's a great idea.
Yeah,
I think we've had some analytical type sellers that have actually asked if we have initial at the bottom.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. Sometimes they want it,
Yeah, right.
so we'll do it if they want it.
Right.
Sure, okay.
Of course.
But we've never had anybody come back and say, like, this isn't what I signed, or why, you know.
Yeah, I didn't watch for that.
Yeah.
Good point, though.
Yeah. Again, most of the thing, and I heard someone say once, they go, worrying for me is good luck, because like 99% of the stuff I worry about never actually happens. So, great meeting. Thanks for coming, everybody. I hope you found this to be informative.
Thank you.
So can you email?
Stick around. We'll be here for as long as you need to be here. Go to the bar, get a glass of water or wine or beer, whatever.
Stick your finger.
Yeah.
And meet some
Email
new
these
people
out.
while you're here.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Investor Empowerment Series Radio Show. Be sure to tune in next week for another empowering episode. We welcome your feedback, so please rate us on iTunes and Stitcher, and visit us at www.investorempowermentchicago.com or tannisgrouprealty.com.